Hi everyone, Stephen Van Tassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife podcast as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. So hey, I'm very glad that you're coming along and listening today, or perhaps you're watching, so we're really glad to have you. Do take the time to subscribe. So I don't have a sponsor today, but I did want to give a shout out to Dave Sifris of Wildlife Services. Make sure you can see that, his card there. I'll give him a little shout out. Dave Sifris of Dave Sifris Wildlife Services. He is a bait maker, and he sent me a whole little box, I'm going to call it a trapper's care package of various baits that he's put together. I'm going to put a couple up here for you to take a look at. One of them's called Muskrat Cherry, and the other one's called Mackinac. Hope those are able for you to see. And thanks, Dave. Really appreciate this. Wanted to give you a little shout out. I'm not calling you a sponsor, so people, if you hate the show, don't hate Dave. We don't want to do that, right? But he was kind enough to send me, like I said, a little trapper's care package. I'm opening up a few others here. Here's one called Applejack Muskrat Call Lure, which is kind of neat. So I'm, be able to maybe give some of these a try. And by the way, some of these baits and lures can be used for other animals than simply what they're labeled for. Here's an Iroquois Beaver Call Lure, 4-ounce package. Again, Dave Sifris. He has his phone number there. Let me put it out. 309-264-7133. That's Dave Sifris, C-S-C-I-F-R-E-S, and it's dsifris, D-S-C-I-F-R-E-S at gmail.com, and he is formulating his little bait manufacturer. Again, 309-264-7133. So, Dave, thank you very much for your little trapper's care package. I wanted to give you a little shout out there for doing that. And, there's more. I haven't pulled it all out here. Here's another. Gosh, this is a big one. He's got a little called Woo Chuck. That's another little lure he's got, Woo Chuck. And then this larger one, I haven't even taken it all out of the canister here. And here he sent me some, he calls it coon tar. It's a raccoon bait and call lure, 16 ounces. And it seems to be seems like a liquid. So it's got a little squeeze bottle there. So he's got quite a little selection. So Mackinac, Muskrat Cherry, Applejack for muskrats, and of course the Iroquois Beaver Call Lure. Hey, thanks, Dave, and check him out, everybody. So you might find something that you like, a useful trapping season's coming. And remember, for wildlife control operators, some of these baits can be useful for wildlife control too. So definitely check him out. I wanted to talk today's episode about respirators. Now, I had an incident online a little while ago where I was just reminding an individual to, perhaps, wear a respirator when you're up in an attic. And wow, let's just say the person did not like what I had to say. Now, that happens. There's a lot of people that are quite sensitive to any type of comments. And I'm going to have another podcast about that, how to handle criticism and how to criticize others and how to talk. One of the things about the internet is everyone seems to be a little more sensitive than perhaps what they should be. And on the other side, people are a little bit more angry and rude than they need to be as well. So I want to talk about that, but that's not today's podcast. I wanted to talk a little bit about respirators. And you'll notice the website I have up here, Granger.com, because the individual made a statement that I thought was just bizarre. The person said, and I think I'm quoting the individual here, "I can't wear a respirator." Wow, that's a can of worms, right? I mean, really? What is wrong with you that you can't wear a respirator? And the individual basically said if they had to wear a respirator, they wouldn't be able to do their job. They'd have to quit and not be able to feed their family. That really, I mean, that's kind of the atomic bomb of an argument, right? If you make me do X, I can't make a living. Okay. Well, let's talk about that for a little bit, because look, I understand wearing respirators in the summertime in a hot attic is just awful. Been there, done that. I get it. But for someone to say that they are unable to wear a respirator that could probably protect their health, if not their life, that's a big claim. And I wanted to explore that a little bit, because that's a big one. So let's take a look here. I'm looking at Grainger. I'm not making any money on Grainger here. I just wanted to show you online here the variety of tools that you have available to you. So when you make a claim, or you hear someone make a claim, I can't wear a respirator, you have to, I'm going to push back on that. And I didn't bother arguing with this person some more. I mean, it was just over the top. And so basically you have to look, hey, it's your health. You do what you want, right? You've been warned. But for people to say that they can't wear a respirator, so let's talk about that for a little bit. So here we have some of your respirators, the disposable kind. I hope that none of you in this industry are wearing the disposable kind, right? Is it better than nothing? Yeah. And none of you, I hope, are wearing these little silly healthcare face masks, right? Up here at the top. Let me click one of those up, right? So you're not wearing one of these things, right? No, I hope the image didn't come out. There it is. Basically, it is more for you're protecting the patient rather than you protecting yourself, right? So you're not wearing that. I'm not trashing this. This mask is not designed really to do much protection of you. It's more for your protection of the patient in this case, right? So, it's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. But for our type of work, we need to protect ourselves, right? We're trying to, when we're going into an attic, we're going into a crawl space, you're wearing the respirator before you open it up, right? When you open it up that hatch, and you have a pile of raccoon feces dropping all over you, or a bunch of guano falling onto you, it's too late, right? It's kind of a little late. You don't close the barn door when the horse is already gone, right? So you want to make sure that you're ready with that. So you have another level, the disposable respirators. They can be N95. It's certainly better, and it has a place. But I'm not exactly sure we should even be wearing these, right? Are you protecting your eyes? How are you protecting your eyes? So, and I'm also concerned about how good of a seal are you actually getting with something like this, right? So that's the question that I would have. And it's really more for maybe dust, where we're worried about not just dust, but we're thinking about fiberglass fibers. We're thinking about viruses. We're thinking about bacteria. Other little nasties that may be floating around. So we want to think about that. So probably not something like that either. So I suspect the individual was talking about these types of respirators, right? You have the half face that just covers your nose and mouth, and you have the full face. And I suspect the individual said, hey, I'm not able to pull that air, because the reality is you have to have lungs strong enough to pull air through the filter, right? So there's greater resistance. If you don't have enough lung power, that's why you're supposed to be going through your medical exam, right? To see, are you physically able to handle the extra respiratory stress and burden on your body to handle a respirator? That's the question. If your doctor says no, well, then that's pretty bad. Then the next question is do you need to ask the doctor, can you use a air-powered respirator? You say, well, air-powered, what do you mean by that? Well, let me pull this image up for you. Here we have a compressor that will pull the air through a filter and then push that filtered air to you, so you're not having to breathe in any harder than you breathing the normal air. Because the filter, the pump is pushing air to your face, and it's actually blowing air out through the mask by a machine. Now, you have some that are battery operated. They'll be battery operated. They go on your hip, and they will pull air from the outside through a filter and then push that air up to your respirator. So basically, you're getting a constant supply of like someone taking a fan and pushing clean air to your face all the time. And then you just simply breathe normally. If you can't breathe with that, then you probably shouldn't be doing this line of work in the first place. I mean, I'm sorry. That's, because it is a physically demanding job. And there are other things to do in this industry than crawling around attics, right? There are other things that you can do that perhaps maybe you can't do this job. I got out of wildlife control in terms of doing a lot of the work because I was tired of climbing ladders. I was sick of it. So I pursued another career. Always kept my finger in wildlife control in the sense of doing the writing and the research, but you don't see me climbing roofs anymore. Okay, those days are gone, and you have to recognize that whether for medical reasons or psychological reasons, there's dangerous aspects to this job, and you may lose your nerve someday. For me, I'm done with climbing all these roofs, right? Power to you guys that are able to do it. But this notion that you can't wear a respirator, is that really true? Because it is true in the sense that not everyone can handle the passive respirators, because that does add, as I said before, of an extra burden to your lung capacity because you have to pull that air through resistance. But when we're talking about a powered active respirator, a machine is already pushing filtered air to your face. In fact, they're rated even better than your passive filters because it's actually cleaning the air and pushing clean air to your face and pushing away any bad air. It's coming out across your face or coming out through the valve in the front. So it's actually gives you it's actually safer than using a passive respirator. So I would hope that any of you out there that are having challenges with your respirator, that you would take the time. This is part of an important aspect of your health and safety in this industry. Let me be blunt without trying to scare people. I'm not trying to use scare tactics here because I'm not selling you anything. I want to convince you to protect your health and take it seriously. I'm in my 50s now. Okay, there are things I did in the earlier part of my career in wildlife control that I regret. Okay, and I'm telling you guys and ladies, the handful of you that are out there, when you're doing this work, when you're 25 years old and think you can dominate the world and that you are a true rock star, you probably are a rock star. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't protect your health when you're younger, don't think it's going to be there when you're in your 50s. The future is talking to you now. I'm the future. Look at me. I'm telling you, there are lots of people that are getting older and they're finding out they can't keep doing what they've been doing since they were 20 anymore. Their body simply can't take it anymore. So if you want longevity in this business, and I hope you do, you need to make sure that you are doing what is necessary to protect your health, because saving time in the early years can cost you a ton of money in later years, because you like, oh, I'm not wearing that respirator. Oh, I'm not going to make sure I get fit tested. Oh, I'm not going to make sure I'm checking my filters properly. Oh, I'm not going to make sure I'm cleaning my equipment properly and storing it because I got to get to this next job. I'm not going to keep track of how long I've been using this air filter. I'm not going to make sure I'm buying quality equipment and making sure it all fits and works properly. Why? Because I'm in a hurry. That's a big mistake. So I certainly hope that none of you out there are thinking to yourself, I can't wear a respirator, it's too hot. I can't wear a respirator. It's too hard for me to pull the air through this filter. I can't wear a respirator because ... Whatever the excuse is, I'm telling you, unless it is a full-on medical reason, you need to be wearing a respirator. And by the way, even if it's a medical reason, you need to ask your doctor, are there other workarounds that you can use? Because I talked about the powered respirators. That should add no extra burden to your lung work than breathing normal air. Okay? So that can certainly be eliminated. You could even be putting oxygen into some of these things if you had to. I mean, again, it's going to start getting expensive, to be sure. But there are probably some workarounds. If we can put people underwater, okay, you should be able to work in an attic. There's one here that I saw that even talked about a cooling system. I didn't even know these things existed, right? Here's one. I'm looking at it now. Here it has a portable airline cooling system. You're saying, oh, Steven, the air is too hot. I get it, man. You can get attics 140 degrees. Okay? It's hot. Okay? You're cooking yourself from the outside and the inside because you're breathing hot air. All right. How about a cooling system for your air? You can do it. There are vests that you can wear that are cooling vests. There are things that you can do to help overcome the environmental conditions that you're in. What I'm telling you is your health worth it? I hope that you're convinced that it is worth it. I want you to believe that it's worth it. You got one set of lungs. Let me tell you something. If you think getting a heart transplant is hard, try to get a lung transplant. They do transplant lungs. Not easy. I met a guy who had a lung transplant. Okay? It's just getting a lung transplant. He had to be careful of dust coming off the road. And we were in a country area, and so whenever a car drove by, what is it doing? It's kicking up all this dust. He had to try to protect himself from that. You don't want to be in that particular situation. You want to make sure that if you're having challenges with your respirator, do the research, do the work, reach out to Grainger, reach out to 3M, reach out to your colleagues in this industry, find a way to protect your health with the equipment. There's a variety of equipment out there, and I haven't even seen all of it, I'm sure. But don't cut corners on your health and safety, because think about what's in an attic. Let me stop giving an advertisement here to Grainger. Think about what's in an attic. You've got perhaps fiberglass. You have cotton fibers, perhaps. You have, maybe in some of your older homes, you might have vermiculite, which is made from asbestos, depending what version you have. Do you know what that even looks like? Think about, you have maybe dead animal parts up there. You have droppings from rodents. Many of you are exposed to more deer mouse droppings than you probably realize. We haven't even talked, that's hantavirus. If those of you who haven't put the connection there between deer mice and hantavirus, when deer mice are pooping and peeing, and they do come into structures. Oh, you don't say to yourself, oh, I live in the city, we don't have them. I was in the middle of Lincoln, Nebraska, and we had deer mice in my garage. I was almost smack dab in the middle of the city. So don't tell me you can't have deer mice in your city. You can. And even if we're not dealing with deer mice, you have house mice. Did you know that the proteins in house mice urine can also cause allergic reactions later in life? I can't prove it, but I suspect that some of my allergy situations, you notice I have this little nasal issue going on when I talk, that part of that could be due to the fact of all the different things that I was exposed to, crawling through attics and dealing with wildlife, that those proteins over time, constant exposure to those proteins, can sometimes, for some people, not everyone, for some people can cause allergic reaction. And then they have allergies. So that can happen, and that happens to people even in laboratory environments. They found that people that worked in laboratory environments that were experimenting on mice and working with mice, that their exposure to those proteins from the dander and from the hair and the urine and the feces, that over about 5 years, they were starting to get allergic reactions. And we're not talking about disease. I'm not talking about a biological disease here. That's a separate question. Wear your safety equipment. I recommend full face respirator, N100s or P100s. I think I'm trying to remember what the third letter is. There's different versions of whether you need to have oil protection or not. Get the 100s, right? Why are we wasting our time with N95s? And even the N100s only are 99.98 or 99.99. They're not perfect. And that's assuming, that's just the filter itself. It's not talking whether they have any leaks on the outside of your, we're not even talking about the seal that the respirator has to your face. Some of you are out there sporting beards. Beards are the new thing now. Great. Hard to wear a beard with a respirator. Some respirators can fit. Depending how you trim your beard, you got to be on skin to skin. You look at a lot of, firefighters, a lot of them are not allowed to have beards. Why? Because they need to wear a respirator. Because you have that stubble in there, you're going to it's going to break the seal. You need to have a seal because you don't want to be pulling air through the filter, not around the filter, and it's not filtered anymore. That's going to be a problem. Protect your health. Protect your lungs. And I understand it's a pain. I understand that it's difficult. I understand that it's hot. But I'm telling you, for some of these infections, some of you living in the Ohio River Valley, there's high levels of histoplasmosis there. A lot of that histocapsulatum, right? Histoplasma capsulatum. That's the actual fungus that can cause histoplasmosis. One breath is enough to cause that disease. You pull those spores into your lungs, and they literally grow fungus in your lungs. One breath. That's all it takes. Protect your lungs, buy the equipment, get the training, go through your fit test, make sure you're medically cleared. Make sure to do this in the right order. Medical clearance, fit testing. The fit testing tends to be annually, or unless you've had a major weight gain or weight loss. I think a major is considered over 10 pounds. Then you check your equipment. Put a date when you pull the cartridge out and put it on. Buy quality equipment. Okay, you want something that's going to be durable. It's going to last. Make sure you have the right filters. Make sure they're installed properly. Make sure you take your mask off properly and you clean your mask so you're not contaminating yourself if you pull off the mask. Put a date on your filters. Ask yourself how many hours you're using it. One of the rules of thumb, if it starts getting harder to breathe through a filter, it's time to change it, but you really want to be changing it before that time, right? Get into the habit of building it into part of your work. I'm not even talking about Tyvek suits here. I haven't even gotten to there, right? Because I know some of you are not going to be wearing that equipment. I get it. That's probably a story for another podcast, but I want you to be thinking about getting that respirator, full face respirator. Ideally, you want to protect that. You want to protect your eyes too. Wear it. If you're having too much difficulty, get one that's powered. Get the right size. You may have to buy a few to get the right size. Do the work. I guarantee you will not regret this decision. It's for a few $100. It'll save you a world of hurt down the road. So for that individual who said that I can't wear a respirator, and any of you thinking that you're in the same boat, I hope that this podcast helps convince you otherwise, because it's simply not true. And if it is true, maybe you've got to find a different line of work. Wildlife control is not worth your health. I just disagree. It's not. There are other things to do than destroy your health for this job. Think about it. I'm Stephen Van Tassel, Wildlife Control Consultant, living the Wildlife Podcast. Why? Because I want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Thanks for listening. And before I end, I just wanted to give another shout out to Dave Sifris. We put the card up for you again. Dave Sifris. He's a bait maker. Check him out. He's not calling him a sponsor, so if you hate the show, don't blame him. He just was kind enough to send me a little Trapper's Care package with some of the baits that he has. Let me pull a few of them up here for you. Thanks, Dave. Much appreciated. Wanted to give a little shout out to you. Thanks for your little Trapper Care package. And everyone else, check him out. I'm sure he'd be glad to hear from you and hook you up with some of his baits. Give them a try. It's good to sort of share the love and try some new things as part of your wildlife control line or your fur line if that's what you're into as well. Love to hear your comments. Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com. Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, both the Pest Geek podcast and myself. Would love to have you on board. If you have some topics or criticisms or ideas that you want, send them along. Love to hear them. Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com. If you know of someone who should be on the show, perhaps it's you, definitely reach out. I'd love to talk to you about interviewing on the show, and perhaps talk to other people about what you have to offer, because we have great listeners in the Pest Geek podcast because they want to get geeky and they want to get accurate and they want to do things right in their wildlife control business and their pest control business. So thanks, everybody. Take care.